So now I'm very happy to introduce our presenter for this evening. Chantal Singer is a registered dietitian nutritionist for St. Joseph Mercy Health Systems Michigan Heart and Vascular Institute, teaching plant-based eating and lifestyle medicine. Chantal is very passionate about plant-based eating for human health, planetary health, and animal welfare.
All right, thank you, Olivia, for that introduction. Thank you to the library, VegMichigan, for making this event happen, and thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to share just how easy, delicious, nutritious, plant-based eating can be. So we're on the menu tonight. We have some Tempeh Tacos, and I'm going to be pairing that with a cilantro lime slaw made with some cabbage and carrots. And we're going to wrap that all up in a corn tortilla. And then the second recipe is going to be the Forks Over Knives carrot cake overnight oats. I've been really excited to demo overnight oats just because of how easy and simple the recipe is. The carrot cake version is a little bit more jazzed up. There's a couple extra steps to it, which I'll demo, obviously. But I'm really excited. These are just phenomenal recipes and really, really easy, simple to make. So first thing, we're going to dive right into it. I'm going to share a couple resources at the end as kind of guides for planning meals and what kind of food groups to include. But we're going to get started with the tacos up first. So we're going to start with sauteing our onions and our red bell pepper. And I'm going to do that on medium heat. So I'm going to get that started. I'm going to get my burner on medium heat here. And then we're actually going to do a water saute today. So I really only need about a tablespoon of water. And then we'll, once the pan gets heated up, I'll add the red pepper and onion. The reason I'm using water instead of oil is simply just to cut the fat. And it's really easy to use water. You hardly miss the oil, and if the veggies do start to stick, you can just add a little bit more water. With the onions and the red bell pepper, the onions do start to sweat a little bit, so they'll saute in their own juices. But this is the onion I'm going to be adding in. So this is white onion. You could use yellow onion, sweet onion, red onion, whatever works. You could actually do without the onion too. So it adds nice flavor, obviously nutrients and whatnot, but if you didn't happen to have onion on hand and you really wanted to make this, you could do just the tempeh and the seasonings. So we're gonna go ahead and get our onion in, and then our red bell pepper as well. And you could, so I have mine diced today, but you could do it in strips if you wanted. And you could do a variety of bell peppers to make it kind of like fajitas. But I got mine diced today. This is just one medium red bell pepper. So lots of nutrients coming from these fresh veggies. We got lots of vitamin C in particular coming from the red pepper, which is really good for our immune system. And while this is sauteing, it's really only going to need about a few minutes or so. We just want it to soften a little bit. And then we're going to add all the rest of our ingredients and pretty much be good to go from there. I am going to chop up the tempeh though. So for anybody who has never had tempeh, this is what the package looks like. See if you can see it very well. So this is the Light Life brand. Most typical grocery stores should have tempeh. It's going to be in the refrigerated section. It's typically in a near like the vegetarian section. And if you can't happen to find it though, I mean, if you've never found or never looked for it, I would just ask a store member and or a staff, and that can save some time. But it's going to be right near the tofu. So it's similar to tofu in that it's made from soybeans. And this is what the patty looks like. This is half of a block that I've already chopped up half, but for time's sake. So it's actually fermented, made from fermented soybeans. So if you see that white and kind of black parts in there, that is actually normal. So that is part of the fermentation process. That's good for our guts. We want to see that. That's all good. It's actually, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it is mixed with brown rice as well. So it's not just soybeans, it's mixed with brown rice. So it's got kind of a heartier texture than tofu. but it is similar to tofu in the sense that it's going to take on the flavor of whatever we cook it with, which is why I've got tons of seasonings, which I'm going to chat here about soon. Just going to give our peppers a little movement here. Still looking good. Okay, so now for the tempeh. Now this is what it's gonna be looking like. It kind of almost looks like a ground chicken or ground turkey, so it's a really nice meat alternative. I'm gonna first start by chopping it into strips. Tempeh is really versatile. If you've ever never used it before, you can have it in, you know, strips like this on sandwiches or in stir fries. You can have it cubed or in triangle shapes. And it's really good ground up kind of like this as taco meat or in chilies. Lots of different things we can do with it. But from here, I'm just going to kind of mince it now. So I chopped it into cubes and then going to kind of mince it up a bit to get that kind of finer ground texture. Tempeh is really high in protein, which makes it a nice meat substitute. And unlike meat, it has very low amounts of fat, and it contains fiber and antioxidants. So great substitute. Something you could do also, you know, if you're just starting to transition from meat to plants, is you could mix tempeh with meat, and that could be kind of a gradual step. But it's really phenomenal with all these flavors. So good to go straight for it if you wanted to. Well, that's good. That's looking pretty similar to our other half. So I'm going to add it to our bowl and wait for our onion and pepper to be done to add it on in. And we'll get my cutting board out of the way. You could also use beans or lentils in this recipe too. So if you didn't have tempeh or you don't happen to like tempeh, you could do lentils, you could do black beans, you could do chickpeas, whatever works. Or you could do a combination of that. I had this with some black beans is a nice touch too. All right, I'm gonna check on our onions and pepper. So they're doing pretty good here. I might add just a touch of water. As you see, most of that water has been soaked up or evaporated. Okay, and then I'm going to show you guys what our seasonings going in here are going to be. So this is really classic taco seasoning blend that I've just created. We have here paprika is the red stuff that we see. So paprika is made from air-dried sweet red bell peppers. We have cumin here, which is the brown, kind of looks like sand. It's made from seed form. It's actually rich in iron, which is good for our cells and energy. And then we have onion powder, garlic powder, classic, nice savory seasonings. We've got a little bit of oregano there, which is actually known to be anti-carcinogenic, so it helps fight cancer. We have some crushed red pepper there, and that crushed red pepper is going to offer some heat. So if you don't like heat, then you could totally just omit that. Another thing you could do is get a taco seasoning blend, but those tend to be really high in sodium. So I was just checking out some of those labels today, and they could be upwards of over like 3,000 milligrams of sodium. And when we're watching, if anybody's trying to watch their blood pressure or heart health, it's really important to keep sodium to less than 2,300, even better would be about 1,500 milligrams per day to help keep the arteries and blood pressure in check. So there's no salt in this seasoning. You could absolutely add salt to taste this recipe if you wanted, but like I said, when there's issues with blood pressure or heart health, it's really good to think about all the sources of sodium that are coming in and keep it in check. So this is a phenomenal blend which we'll add when we add in the tempeh. And then one other ingredient I'm going to be adding is salsa. So this is low sodium salsa. You could use regular salsa, or you could use just canned diced tomatoes. You'd want to keep their juice in there as well, and that would work just fine too. All right, so our onions and red pepper are softened. We're gonna go ahead and add in our tempeh. So tempeh is super easy. Like I said, you don't have to do much else to it. Chop it up and throw it into the pan, and it's good to go. Like I said, though, you can steam it. Steaming it can have a nice texture. I like to steam it for stir fries occasionally. All right, so from here, we're pretty much just warming it. So I'll get the rest of our ingredients in. With the salsa. So that's going to give it really, really nice flavor. And it'll be familiar flavors. So that's another thing too. When we're transitioning to more, from animal products to plant-based products, we want to keep in those similar flavors that we're used to. And that can be comforting. Okay, this is looking really, really tasty. It's smelling really good. I know being virtual, you can't smell it, but really, really good aromas in here. All right, so while this continues to warm, actually, sorry, totally forgot my seasonings. We're gonna throw all those in there. And mix it up. I'm gonna add just a little bit more water so that it combines nice and evenly. And then from here, we're going to wrap it up in the corn tortillas and make that cabbage slaw. So we're gonna go ahead and just let that continue to cook and warm. Transition some of my tools, and we'll get our cabbage slaw ingredients. So this recipe is so easy, mostly because I've bought pre-chopped cabbage. You could absolutely chop your own cabbage. That would be the most cost-effective way to make this recipe. But sometimes, when we've got lots of other things going on, it can, really help to have some things pre-chopped. So this is a mix. I found this at Fresh Time. This is Josie's organic coleslaw mix. It's a blend of green cabbage, red cabbage, and carrots. So with that green cabbage and the red cabbage, we're getting a lot of cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are particular powerful cancer fighters. So good to get in servings of those. I'm going to be squeezing some lime juice on top. So lime juice is really going to give it just a nice fresh flavor. And it's also going to offer some extra vitamin C. So fun fact about vitamin C is that vitamin C helps us to absorb iron more easily. And there's iron coming from the tempeh in particular. So that's just one example of how foods can work synergistically together. I'm gonna do a whole lime in this recipe. So it's about 2 tablespoons. If you really like lime juice, you could do even more, or if you didn't want as much, you could do less. The thing about making food at home is that you can always adjust seasonings or vegetables, switch out things according to your preferences. So good to keep that in mind. All right, so I've got my lime juice in there, and actually, so one thing, the recipe does call for we got one really big piece of cabbage in there, that's okay. 2 tablespoons of lime. I'm actually gonna do just a little bit more because I like a little extra lime. Good flavor. And then last but not least, I'm gonna add cilantro. And I'll turn my pan down. Let's actually check on the tempeh here. Ooh, looking really good. Smelling even better there. So it really does kind of look like ground meat, but way better. Okay, so back to our cabbage slaw. We have our raw cabbage in here, which is going to give it that really nice crunch. And then I'm going to add cilantro. So this is fresh cilantro, tongue twister there. Fresh cilantro, well actually any cilantro. Some people have a gene where cilantro tastes like soap. So it's kind of like you love it or you hate it. If you are one of those people that it doesn't taste very good, then you could absolutely leave this out. You could do parsley even if you wanted, or just leave it out. I'm going to leave a little bit extra just to top the tacos with. But cilantro, being a fresh herb, is really high in antioxidants. So that's really helpful for fighting inflammation. One other thing about cilantro too is that when we're chopping it up, we want to make sure we're just getting the leaves part. And I meant to show that to you guys up a little bit more closely. So we just want to see, and I wasn't pretty perfect with it, but we just want this leaf part. Let's see if I have any. Yeah, I did get a little bit of a stem in there. So this is what the stem would look like. We want to avoid that just because we're going to get the most flavor out of the leaves, and the stems are not really the best texture either. So herb strippers or scissors can help. I just use a knife, and it doesn't always start out perfect, but it works. All right, so this is our cilantro lime slaw. Easy does it, just like that. You could definitely add avocado in here if you wanted. You might want to mix it up before adding it in here, so it's kind of more in a liquid state. I have some avocado slices I'm going to put on top, although to be honest, they're kind of browning right now, so I might not add them. But that is our cilantro lime slaw. Easy does it. I think we're probably ready to start plating these tacos. So I have a couple corn tortillas here. Nothing too exciting about them. Got some salsa on the plate. And we are going to layer in the tempeh. Actually, I'm going to use a different tool to make it a little bit easier here. So I have avocado slices, like I mentioned. I don't know if I'll put them in. Maybe I can get a couple of them. So I'll show you guys at each step of the way what we're looking at here. So this is what the tempeh ends up looking like, and to be honest, I think this looks phenomenal if I don't say so myself. It's really nice to have those peppers and onions in there too, but like I said, if you don't happen to have those on hand, you could definitely just make the tempeh with the seasonings. You'd probably want the salsa in there too, but that is our base. So then I'm going to get in the cilantro lime slaw. Oops. We'll get a good portion on there. And it's really pretty with the green and the red. It's kind of almost Christmassy. And that's one simple and easy way to tell if we've got a nutritious meal, is look for the color. So we want to see lots of color in fresh fruits and vegetables. If we're thinking about the My Plate, the vegan My Plate, which I'll share with you guys at the end here, we do want ideally half the plate to be fruits and vegetables at most meals. And so that means color, right? We want to see bright, vibrant colors. But keep in mind that even, the white foods like cauliflower or mushrooms or, even this green cabbage that looks a little white has tons of nutrients in there too. So I do have some jalapeno slices. We'll see if that can garnish it a little bit. But those are our tempeh tacos with the cilantro lime slaw. You want to be careful with the jalapenos because they can be super spicy. But if you like that heat, definitely add them in. But you could also top this with some, if you had some extra salsa or hot sauce, but keep in mind the sodium in there if you're trying to watch your blood pressure. So we'll set these aside and I'll shift some of my ingredients to make space for our overnight oats. And we'll turn our stove off. All right, so this, I think, as I mentioned, is from Forks Over Knives, which is actually the documentary that, I don't know how I'm looking for the word here, motivated me, I guess is the word, to transition to vegan, plant-based eating. And so it's really motivational, educational, highly recommend that watch. If you have it. I think it's available on Netflix and some other streaming platforms. Okay, so this recipe is a phenomenal breakfast, but it could also be a snack. And to be honest, I had some of it for dinner last night, so any time of the day works. It's kind of like a dessert. It's really nice and tasty. But as I mentioned, I love overnight oats for breakfast because they're so filling, and you can make up overnight oats really, really easily, which I'll explain before we get started. So overnight oats, all we really need are the oats, the plant-based milk, and you could really call it a day there, but adding some fruit, maybe some nuts or cinnamon is a basic way to make some overnight oats. You can do multiple at a time, and they'll last for up to 5 days in the fridge. And ours, like I said, is a little bit more jazzed up today. So as far as the carrot cake part goes, I'm going to be shredding a carrot to start. So I have a little grater, kind of microplane here, and then I have a few carrots. I'm not going to use all these carrots, but I wanted them just in case. So they look a little funky. I've already peeled them. These are actually from this farm at St. Joe's. So if anybody hasn't heard of that, it is in the Ann Arbor-Ypsi location. And they have the CSA's farm shares that you can get. I don't think they have any right now, but you could sign up for the spring or summer. And they have just phenomenal produce. There's really nothing better than fresh, local food. So I'm going to grate this carrot. We're going to try to get about a half cup. But we'll see. We want to make sure that it's grated because we want it to kind of really well combine with the oats and all the other ingredients. If you could buy shredded, like pre-shredded carrots, but I think those would be probably a little bit too more thick than we want. And you'd have more kind of chunks of carrot in there, which could be fine, but depends on your preference. If you got the extra time, I'd recommend doing this. I'd say that is good enough. So we are going to, I'll set this aside for a moment. And we'll put that was actually the only thing I had to do. Everything else is going right in this container. I have a mason jar today and a lid. We'll just shake it up. I won't even need to stir it up. And you could do multiple servings at a time in something big like this, but we're just going to do one today. So we'll start with our oats. These are rolled oats, or also known as old-fashioned oats. And oats are really high in soluble fiber, so this is really helpful for heart health and lowering cholesterol. Fiber in general is really good for our gut bacteria. It's helpful for feeling full, which is great for weight management. And It's also helpful for controlling blood sugars. It does a lot of phenomenal things. And we can only find fiber in plant foods. So we cannot find fiber in animal foods, only in plants. And all right, so we got our oats, our nice complex carb in there. And then we're adding everything else. So I'm going to layer in our carrots, our shredded carrots. And then our flaxseed. So this is ground flaxseed. With flaxseed, we want to get it when it's called the flax meal or ground flaxseed because we can absorb the nutrients a little bit better in this state. Now, flaxseed is going to be found typically in the baking aisle, oddly enough. And it's really high in protein, it's high in fiber, and it's most importantly got some omega-3 fatty acids. So these are helpful for inflammation. They're also helpful for lowering triglycerides as well, which is just another type of fat in the blood. So we have pepitas, also known as pumpkin seeds here. Just about a tablespoon of these. These are unsalted. Go ahead and add them in. Lots of protein and healthy fats and fiber there. And then we're going to be adding some dates. So these are medjool dates, and they were pitted. I've chopped them up. They do get a little bit sticky when you chop them up, so it's good to try to kind of piece them apart. Now, dates are going to be, of course, a sweetener here. And the awesome thing about dates is that they're a nutritive sweetener is what we call them. So most sweeteners are non-nutritive sweeteners. So things like cane sugar, brown sugar, maple syrup, all we're getting is calories and sugar without any vitamins or minerals or fiber or anything like that. But with dates, we get the natural sugar. And we also get a bunch of nutrients. So we get fiber, that helps control blood sugars and the sugars coming through. We get antioxidants, we get fiber, as I mentioned, and so it's a nutritive sweetener. We'll go ahead and put that in there. Try to get it as, pieced apart as you can, but you might get kind of like a chunk of date in there. Nothing wrong with that. All right, and then I'm going to add in our spices. So I have cinnamon here and nutmeg, which are also high in antioxidants. Being herbs and spices, they really pack a powerful punch in a small bit, so you don't even need too much. Go ahead, add that in, and starting to layer up pretty nicely. I don't know if you can see that on screen quite as well, but we're gonna mix it up with the almond milk, and it's gonna look kind of more brown, but I am gonna jazz it up with some toppings. So here I have almond milk, and if we want to avoid any excess added sugar, go for the unsweetened almond milk. You could do any other type of plant-based milk, soy milk, oat milk, flax milk, you name it. There's tons of different types out there nowadays. All right, and now I'm gonna take our spoon. Actually, no, I said I wasn't gonna do that. I said I was gonna shake it up. I've got this lid. And that's it. So if I were doing this for the week ahead, I probably would have done a couple more servings in here, but I've already got some leftovers from testing this. So, yeah, breakfast for the week. And we want to let this sit overnight. Actually, it doesn't even need to be overnight. It could sit for about 2 hours and get to the texture that we're going for. The oats will absorb that liquid and be ready to eat. So there's no cooking required, although you could throw it in the microwave or throw it on a pan to heat it up if you wanted, if you like it hot. But it's technically the Swiss way to eat it cold. I love it both ways. I also really love this recipe for traveling, and actually I'll talk about that as we dish it out. So with the magic of TV, we've pretended that has sat for at least a couple hours, and then we'll take out the final product. Okay, so we'll plate it in here. So what I was saying was This is a really fantastic recipe too for travel. So if you've got, you know, whether it be camping or just a long road trip, we love to make really big batches of these in a big container and have that for our trips, because you can put it in a cooler and it'll last for up to 5 days, probably up to 7 days, but it's really filling. It's got a lot of nutrients in there, and it's tasty too. So win-win-win. All right, so I'm going to be a little bit try to be a little bit fancy today with our almond butter to top. There are suggestions for toppings. You don't have to put any of them on there. This is just for presentation purposes. But actually, I want to show you guys what it looks like. Oh, excuse me. What it looks like before I put the toppings on. So nothing too super exciting. I have to say that it tastes a lot better than it looks in this form. It seriously tastes like dessert. It is so scrumptious. I'm gonna sprinkle or kind of drizzle on some almond butter here, and that will of course add some nice flavor and some healthy fats and some protein. I've got some raisins, which are pretty classic in carrot cake, so I did want to add those to top. And then another thing I have is coconut. This is not in the recipe, but these are just unsweetened coconut shreds, which is typical in carrot cake, so I wanted to garnish it with a little sprinkle of that, so just about a teaspoon. And then one thing I actually wanted to do too is shred a little bit more of my carrot, and so we can get that color to pop. You do not need to do this if you're just, you know, prepping for the work week, but for this demo, I wanted to try to make it a little bit prettier. Okay. All right, so there we go. There are our carrot cake overnight oats. And it is just really sweet, really delicious, and like I said, super filling. Win, 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 all across the board. Now, before the Q&A, I did want to chat about a couple guides that are really helpful for planning meals, and I wanted to explain what foods we use today go in which categories. So we'll start with the Daily Dozen. So this is Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. It's a free downloadable app. It's a checklist of everything we should ideally fit in each day for optimal health and longevity. And those categories are beans, and that includes like lentils and other legumes, soy foods like tofu and tempeh, and edamame. So our tempeh is going to be in the beans category today. Berries is another category, just because berries are particularly higher in antioxidants compared to some fruits. But all other fruits are awesome too, and they go into this category. So we have, raisins and dates, which would be counted as a fruit there. And then as far as cruciferous vegetables go, those are our powerful cancer fighters, as I mentioned. Cruciferous just refers to the type of plant species, meaning cross-bearing. This includes things like cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, bok choy. And so our cabbage, as part of our slaw, is going to be acting as our cruciferous vegetable. And then we actually don't have any greens, which is really surprising. I love putting greens in my recipes, but no greens in these two today. But that would be dark leafy greens like kale, spinach with chard, collard greens. Really good to get those in each day. Other vegetables, so the carrots in both of the recipes would count as other vegetable, any other non-starchy vegetable. And then flaxseed, so we use ground flaxseed, which is obviously flaxseed. And then the almond butter would be considered, a nut butter. As far as grains go, we want to focus on whole grains that are minimally processed. So the oatmeal would count in there. And then corn tortillas are a little processed, but they're still pretty wholesome. So that would still count as a whole grain from the corn tortilla. And then we got tons of spices in here. So all those Mexican seasonings and cinnamon and nutmeg would be counted down there. And he also includes exercise and beverages as well. So that's a really great resource. Another one I wanted to share is the vegan MyPlate. So you may have heard of the USDA MyPlate, and this is the vegan version from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Really simple and easy way to plan meals. So thinking like, half the plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter grains, a quarter protein, and then not forgetting about calcium as well. Not to say that every meal has to be set up like this, but it's really helpful to make sure we're getting all the nutrients that we need and feeling full and satisfied. So as far as our tempeh tacos go, we have the cabbage, which is, of course, vegetable, and our tomato is technically a fruit, actually. We've got the tempeh, which is our plant-based protein. We've got the corn tortilla as part of our whole grain. And then there's going to be a little calcium coming from the tempeh too, because it's coming from soybeans. So beans and greens are a good way to remember sources of plant-based calcium. But we do have calcium coming from our almond milk here as well. So that's fortified in this dish. We've got fruit here coming from the raisins and the dates. We've even got vegetables for breakfast, right? Carrots going right there. And then we have tons of protein packed in here from the nuts and seeds, and even the oats. Oats are a pretty good source of protein as well. And of course, oats would be considered the whole grain there. And already touched on the calcium. So with that being said, I am ready and happy to take questions. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope this was inspiring for you to try out a new dish or two. And that's actually one thing I wanted to share too. Actually, before Q&A, a couple more things. If you are, first starting to want to transition to plant-based eating, it's really important to think about why. So is it for health? Is it to, help with, health and energy, or to prevent, treat, or reverse a chronic disease? Or is it for animal welfare? Have you learned about the horrific things that are happening in factory farms and you sympathize with the animals? Or is it because of the environment and you know how damaging the animal agriculture can be to the environment? It's really important to first and foremost learn, so educate ourselves on these different areas, and use that as motivation as well. Another tip I have is trying to do it with somebody. So hopefully someone in your house might be on board for trying a plant-based recipe each week, or if it's a friend or other family member that you can share recipes with and talk about it with, or even a healthcare provider. It's really good to have a support figure. And then another really helpful tip is to think about, what you're adding. So what kind of, simple question is, what can I add to the plate? Instead of focusing what kind of things are not being on the plate anymore. It just helps foster a little bit more positive relationship with food, and it makes it a little bit easier. So I think that is all I had. So really happy to take any questions.
Chantal, there were a couple people that said this is their first time trying tempeh, or they've never tried tempeh before. And they seem very excited to try this recipe, saying it looks delicious. I was wondering if you had other suggestions of other great ways to use tempeh for people that are excited about giving it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I love tempeh. It's just so easy to make. I mean, you saw everything that was required for today's prep. But so crumbling it up like this is obviously good for tacos. We can also put that in chilies too. So that could be a meat alternative in a chili. We can also do tempeh in strips, and you could do a little marinade with it. Lots of recipes online, so feel free to check out the recipe websites on the resources list that Olivia shared, but just typing in like tempeh recipes, and tons will come up. But I love like a tempeh bacon. So there's a little marinade you can make to make strips of tempeh and to mimic kind of bacon. And it's its own food, but it really makes nice for sandwiches. So you could do whole wheat bread, lettuce, tomato, tempeh, or mustard, whatever else, other veggies. And that is just delicious. Let's see. Tempeh strips also could go with like a breakfast scramble too. That could work. Let's see, we do air fried tempeh as well. So in stir fries, two different ways for tempeh for stir fries. So you can steam tempeh and it gets a little fluffier. And then, or you could air fry it and it'll get crispy. So whatever kind of texture you like, good to try out each way. I've breaded tempeh before. So doing like you would, liquid flour and breadcrumbs mixed with some Italian seasonings, garlic, whatever. Really, really nice to have breaded tempeh too. And I think that's about all I got off the top of my head, but there's so many ways to use tempeh. So I really encourage you guys to just go to any of those plant-based recipe websites, type in tempeh and see what looks good.
That's great. Yeah, just the other night, I love making homemade pizzas with just whatever veggies we have around the house. And I actually crumbled and sauteed some tempeh and added it on top of the pizza. Kind of the last step as a little like mock meat crumble type thing. It was quite delicious.
There you go.
Someone did also say never heard of tempeh. Just in case for anyone who was late, could you just give a basic rundown of what it is and like the nutritional benefits of it?
Yeah. So this is tempeh, if anybody happened to miss it. And it is made from fermented soybeans and it's mixed with brown rice as well. So it kind of forms this like patty almost. And it does have some brownish and white spots on it that is natural. That's part of the fermentation process. And it's found near tofu, so near the vegetarian section. And it's really high in protein. So you can see here 18 grams of protein per serving. To put that in perspective, the average adult only needs about 50 grams of protein per day. So that's a lot of protein packed into like a third of this block. And it's also really high in fiber. So we've got 6 grams of fiber per serving. That's phenomenal. Fiber is that key nutrient for overall disease risk reduction. So really important to get that fiber in. It's also very low in saturated fat. So saturated fat is harmful to our health in a number of ways, particularly for heart health. It's an artery clogger and for diabetes, and it plays a factor in insulin resistance. So low amounts of saturated fat in here, 0 sodium, also very heart healthy, no cholesterol coming from a plant food. And lots of vitamins and minerals as well. We got some calcium and some iron, as I mentioned earlier too.
Awesome. Yes, it's delicious, very versatile, and really quite readily available, I'd say, at most grocery stores as well. The common grocery stores, you can usually find it by the tofu, or they'll generally will be a section with, different like plant-based vegan like meats or different substitutes like that. So it'll often be around that area, but it's pretty well known. So if you're having trouble looking for it, just ask someone. Okay, let me see. There is a question. Kirsten said, if we have leftovers, will they keep? How do you recommend keeping the leftovers if anyone manages to have any?
Yes. Leftovers will keep. They'll keep in the fridge for up to 5 to 7 days. I would keep them separate though. So that is one thing. I would keep the cabbage slaw separate. The cabbage slaw might be like 5 days. I don't know though, because we actually made this. I made this recipe last week, and I think our cabbage slaw actually did stay good for a week because we had some leftover that we just ate the other day. I think that lime juice really helps preserve it. So yeah, about 5 to 7 days. Keep it
very nice. And what about the oats? You said you usually pre-make those for like the week, so they'll last maybe a week.
Yep, you can make a bunch at once for the week, and wait, what was the question?
Oh, just how long do the oats last?
5 to 7 days. 5 to 7 days.
Okay, great.
The texture though, I would say probably about 5 days with oats, because the texture can get a little bit more mushy the longer it's sitting. So yeah, probably like 3 to 5 days for the oats.
Sure, that makes sense. Um, well, we are almost at time, but I just have another question. If you just had, like, it seems like you make the overnight oats frequently. Are there other mix-ins you enjoy other than I mean, this version looks delicious, but I know you can obviously kind of mix it up however, however
Yeah,
works for you. So,
yeah. So the classic one that we do is actually a peanut butter powder. So I find that a peanut butter powder is a little bit better than regular peanut butter, because it uh, it gets the flavor a little bit more evenly throughout. The nut butters are a little bit sticky, but it still works good either way. But I like peanut butter powder, and then cinnamon, and then some kind of fruit. It's typically usually bananas or blueberries or both. And then so it'd be oats, flax, peanut butter powder, fruit, and then the nut milk. And so it's just, yeah, 5 ingredients, really simple. And then another one I like is with chia seeds instead of flax. So, just mixed berries, chia seeds instead of flaxseed, oats, and nut milk, and some cinnamon. Also, putting some extracts in there, like vanilla extract or almond extract, can give it a unique flavor too.
very nice. For the chia seeds, if you use those, do you recommend like grinding them ahead of time? Are they more is the nutrients more absorbent if they're pre-ground, or does it not matter?
Yeah, I think it matters a little bit more with the flax, but with the chia seeds, if we grind them up a little bit, that can help. Or chewing thoroughly is helpful too.
Sure. Very nice. Okay, looks like there's one more question before we end. Just ask, can you use steel cut oats in the overnight oats recipe?
Oh, I meant to say, you know what? No, I don't think that steel cut oats will give us the best texture. I don't know if they'll absorb all that nut milk. They maybe could. I've never tried it, and I don't think I've seen it before. But I want to say no. Using the rolled oats or old fashioned is best.